Palestinians have had it, and with everything happening around the world and involving Palestine and Israel right now, it feels as if Palestinians are left alone, and with the black community also rallying behind their own cause and saying that they're gonna vote for whoever they want to vote. After we saw a lot of Palestinian content creators saying that they shouldn't vote for Kamala Harris, it's not known what's gonna be next now for the watermelon community. Now, this Palestinian sister came out saying that she's done enough, she's done a lot, but she feels like she's tried and it's not enough. And at this point, she doesn't know what to do, whether she should give up or not. You know, I think we reach a point in life where we just think that the system is rigged against us. But for black people, I know this is a conversation that we're familiar with. Because if you are a black person, then you understand that everything is rigged against you. I'm not saying it's a slap in the face for watermelon people or anything, but this video makes me feel as if she's in the spot that most black people have been for generations and ages. Take a look at our video and tell me what you think in the comments as we begin.
A couple weeks ago, I made a video where I was mainly calling out the hypocrisy of liberals and progressives who showed their support for BLM in 2020 and wanted to defund the police and prison reform and change the justice system in 2020, but in 2024 are getting behind Kamala Harris. And I was calling out the hypocrisy of it all. And that video started off as, if not Kamala, then Trump, and you're a Trump supporter. And then it was, you know, you're lying about Kamala Harris. And then it was, you're being anti-black. And that video was never intended to be at Black Americans, because I didn't think that Black Americans were even in support of Kamala Harris at the time. I was mainly speaking to mostly white liberals and progressives who were very excited about Kamala Harris being the Democratic nominee for presidency. And I could have clarified what I meant shortly after, but honestly, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted by America. And I took that video down because I realized that it wasn't contributing to furthering the conversation. In fact, it was being used to contribute to the violence that is being used against people of color right now. And, you know, I was emotional when I made that video. I have been very emotional. I'm emotional right now. I have been consistently emotional on this app. I've been very vulnerable on this app. And these videos that I make, it's not videos that I ever wanted to make. I make these videos because it was out of necessity. The US media wasn't talking about the Jinn in Gaza. So yes, I feel not only emotional, but I feel rage and anger and frustration. And sometimes you're not thinking about saying all the perfect things. You're not thinking about protecting people's feelings all the time. You know, I've seen so much death in the last few months. I've seen babies whose heads were decapitated. And not just one, not just two, not just three, plenty. I've seen thousands of videos by now of children whose bodies in Gaza are completely ripped apart. I've seen a burnt pregnant woman whose body was burnt to char, and doctors trying to retrieve the baby that was in her belly. I've listened to Palestinian men recall being tortured in Israeli prisons and how they were raped by dogs. I am mentally, I will never be the same. I will never be the same. And I feel rage and frustration along with so much pain. And I sometimes ask myself, is that rage acceptable? Is it tolerable? And it feels like it's not. It's not, especially right now. It's not acceptable. A couple years ago, I started a documentary where the premise was to capture the voices of communities who are often marginalized and have no seat on the global stage, and to give them a spotlight and to bring their stories to people in the Western world in hopes that people would find human connection, that people would see that they are just like us and that their lives are equal to us, and essentially that we would care. We would care about what happens to people in the global South. And what I found, you know, right off the bat was that a lot of people did not care. But then when October 7th happened and people saw the genocide that was happening, people did care. But I also have been humbled to realize that people care to an extent. People care to the extent that it doesn't affect them. And they can't afford to bring that over here. They have to take care of themselves and their families and their loved ones. And so they're not willing to go and do the most for the people in the global south who are suffering. And I guess that's understandable, right? Like, we all want to protect our loved ones. But I can't help to wonder, is that the mentality that so many bystanders had when our ancestors were being colonized and enslaved and genocide and massacred and going through apartheid? Isn't that the mentality that so many bystanders had as our ancestors were being tortured and enslaved and all of that, right? Like, then how can we be mad about what happened to our ancestors if right now in this very moment we're perpetuating that same rhetoric onto so many innocent people in the global south? And so I ask myself often, I find myself asking myself every day, can the world be saved? And the only chance that the world has at being saved at this point is if it happens together, if we're all locked in together. But, you know, in the last few weeks, I realized just how fragile our relationships are to each other and how easy it is to manipulate these relationships and to, you know, completely stomp out any unity that happens. And it's such a loss of innocence for me, because I genuinely believe that, like, if people cared and if people knew what was happening, we would actually be able to make change. These politicians and corporations are not just killing people, they're killing the environment, they're killing nature. So many people in the global south have to migrate to the Western world because of our consumerism, because of our garbage, because of how much pollution we put out into the world. We are destroying their habitat. We are destroying their environment. And we take no accountability. And we allow our government to continue the carnage that they are committing across the world. And I don't feel like the global south has enough time. I think in the next few years, we're going to see more and more people coming through our borders. And it's because of us. It is us participating in the system and allowing our government to continue doing what they're doing. Our government and governments around the world are not putting an end to climate change. They've come out with more ways to continue climate change with AI and everything right now. And I ask myself, like, can the world be saved? And like, it's been a humbling experience to know that I don't think so, because it has to happen together. And for it to happen together, so much that is above my pay grade. Like, we are so divided, and I don't even know where to begin to like make these connections. And I thought that I was doing my part by bringing their stories to people in the West, but like, it's not enough. And I feel like I'm not doing enough. And I just feel like I have to mentally prepare myself to seeing more death and being numb to it.
We recently did a video where a black sister came out online and said that she didn't know that even TikTok was rigged against black people. Like, if you're a content creator, you do understand that your views drop every time you start doing a video about your culture. If you're a black person, if you show your natural hair in your video, you might not get a lot of views. You know why? Because the algorithm automatically stops pushing your videos. Immediately you start doing anything that is cultural related to black folks, right? And in that video, I did also mention some of the things that do happen in the movies industry, as well as when it comes to business advertising and marketing, where specific products are not advertised or marketed to black people, but black people are the major consumers of all products all around the world. We're talking about wigs, hair products, and skincare products, but originally these things were not marketed or directly marketed to black people. And the other thing that black people do face is systemic racist and racial inequalities, as well as police unaliving, that some races don't seem to be grappling with at higher rates as black people. That's one of the reasons as to why I'm pointing to this phenomenon, because I think that these watermelon sisters and watermelon content creators are just now stepping into the scene of systemic injustice and inequalities that they never used to grapple with at such levels as we are seeing. And one of the reasons as to why she's now concerned is that she's seeing that at first she could use her voice, right, to bring out people to rally behind her causes and other Palestinian causes as well. But now they are seeing that people are beginning to change their perspectives and rally more behind their own causes in their own communities. Because just think about it. At first, we were just rallying behind palm color causes and other marginalized communities. But when it comes to issues affecting black people all over the world, nobody does anything about it. Just think about Congo. Just think about what's happening or what happened in other African countries as well. So these are the conversations that we need to be having. Now, let's also talk about one of the reasons as to why the relationship between the black community and the Palestinian community might be dwindling. So the rise of movements such as the Black Lives Matter movement has seen increased solidarity within Palestinian causes for the black community. Now, this has sometimes led to friction, particularly when these movements are perceived to be in conflict with other political or social agendas. Media portrayal and misinformation can also exacerbate tensions. Misleading narratives or biased reporting can create misunderstandings and fuel animosity between communities. Things that we've seen our watermelon sisters do in recent times. Like, you do remember that a lot of these content creators were aimed at inappropriately criticizing black people for their hair, for their color, for their skin color texture. It's them who spread this misinformation and critic against the black community, but at the same time, it is them that expect the black community to show solidarity towards them. So I don't get that. While there is a significant overlap in the struggles faced by both communities, there are also unique challenges that each group faces. This can sometimes lead to disagreements or priorities and strategies for activism. Priorities such as the ones that black people are saying that it's time for them now to decide whatever they want to decide. If they want to vote for Kamala, they'll do that. If they want to vote for the Trump train, they'll also do that. Now, the other thing is geopolitical events such as the Israel-Palestinian conflict, which can also influence domestic relationships. For instance, differing opinions on U.S. foreign policy towards Israel and Palestine can also create divisions within and between communities. The other thing is the long-standing alliance between black and Jewish activists, particularly during the civil rights movement, sometimes strains when issues related to Israel and Palestinians are discussed. This historical context can add layers of complexity to current tensions as well. But all in all, you can also leave your thoughts in the comment section and tell me what other things that you think have further exacerbated the divide between the watermelon community and the black community. And do bear in mind that we did cover topics on other videos involving this discussion as well. And with everything that has been mentioned, watermelon people still feel that the black community should help them rally behind their causes. Like, I know that there's a lot of injustice happening with the G side of the unaliving of Palestinians, but you have to understand that their approach also does count. Like, the way they are approaching this situation, some of it is just unbearable. Like, some are taking to social media criticizing black people at the same time. Some are just straight out insulting black people. Like, I don't understand that solidarity is very important, but some of these content creators from the watermelon community have to be accountable and responsible for what they put out there on the internet, because you gotta understand the struggle that black people are going through all over the world, like a constant struggle that has been going on for generations and generations that some other marginalized communities have never grappled with, right? We're not just talking about systemic injustice here. We are talking about the AI also being biased against black people. Like, imagine, even technology is being biased against black people. So black people gotta be smart and strategic in the way that they are approaching these causes and also helping other communities as well, because we wouldn't just want to set ourselves on fire and keep others warm, if you know what I'm saying. With that being said, leave your thoughts in the comments and tell me what you think about today's discussion. I'll see you in the next video. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed our content.